I'd spent many hours getting everything in order before my 2-week vacation. I leaned back in my chair and turned to admire the scenery through the window at my desk when I heard the unmistakable, sweet voice of my assistant. "So, Luke, are you ready for the big day?" "I'm as ready as I'll ever be, Melanie. It's not like I haven't done this before." "Make it so it's not, okay, boss? You don't need to set a record for the most marriages in a decade." I smiled. "Are you picking on me?" "Maybe a little bit. But you're too good a guy to have to deal with all the shit you've been through. Call it what it is, Mel. It was a whole bunch of bull. Are you ready to take off? Maybe you need me to take care of something?" "No, I think we've already covered everything. Thanks for offering to let me get away after Wednesday for Saturday's wedding. I can just go to the pub today and relax before I get bogged down in the details on Thursday and Friday. I'm glad we're having a small wedding. So you'll report me to HR if your assistant gives you a big hug?" "I've never done this before." Melanie has become one of my closest friends and has been special to me since the day I hired her shortly after taking a position at Personal Wealth Financial almost 10 years ago. I will never forget interviewing her. Her resume made her the top contender, but when she walked into my office, I saw a somewhat homely, skinny girl who seemed shy and reserved. I didn't immediately notice the redness around her nose and slightly darkened eyes. The poor girl was sick as a dog, but still struggled to get through the interview. I was impressed enough to invite her for a second interview. It was then that I met a real dynamo with an overflowing personality. Admittedly, she was not attractive in appearance. She was skinny as a rail and seemed to lack the butt to hold up her pants. Nevertheless, I learned that she was full of self-confidence and personality, and radiated a beauty that could have been taught by the most beautiful girls I knew. Her husband was a lucky man. I decided to spend a few hours at my favorite pub near my home in Kirkland, Washington, and have a light dinner. Kaylee, the bartender, has played many roles for me over the years. Her beautiful red hair framed the stern face of the woman who was my second mom, confidant, counselor, and caring friend. As a young woman, I'm sure she was quite attractive, but a hard life and smoking took its toll on her features in her late 40s. But to me, she was a wonderful person. She saw me at my worst and always found the right words when I needed them. The pub was sparsely populated, with the familiar smell of fried food and an atmosphere of soothing raw emotion. As I approached the bar, Kaylee looked in my direction and smiled. "Mr. Three Cats to the Wind. How's my favorite customer doing?" "Better than I deserve, Kaylee. Are you still chained to that man of yours, or are you ready to run away with me? What, and ruin this Saturday's big day for your beautiful bride? The usual, Luke?" "Yes." When Kaylee disappeared behind the faucet, I noticed an attractive woman sitting alone 3 stools away from me. I estimated her to be about 35. She was nibbling on her lower lip and smirking slightly, which seemed to be a result of my chatter with Kaylee. I decided to be a neighbor and greet her. "Hi." Her brow furrowed and her eyes glittered suspiciously as she regarded me. "You don't look drunk." I raised an eyebrow. "That's the most interesting greeting I've ever been thrown." "No, I'm not drunk. The bartender said you were 3 dead. I thought that meant she thought you were drunk." "Oh?" I grinned. "That's her nickname for me, but it's not 3 sheets. It's 3 cheats." "Great. Another guy who can't keep it in his pants." She seemed to bite her lip a little harder, and the frown on her face said it was personal to her. Just as I was about to speak, Kaylee put my beer in front of me and came to the rescue. "Lady, Luke is one of the sweetest and most loyal men I've ever met. He wasn't a cheater." Sadness darkened her face, and her lips quivered. "I'm sorry." I was sure tears were about to come, so I nervously held out my hand for a greeting, hoping to avoid the emotional flood that seemed inevitable. "No problem. I'm Luke." She held out her hand to me for a quick spasmodic handshake, as if she was afraid of human contact. "No, I'm sorry. I guess you can call me deceived too many times to count, or Linda for short." "Nice to meet you, Linda for short." "Excuse me. Sore subject?" Her mood improved dramatically after my silly joke. I hate making women cry, and the change in her mood was a welcome development. Yes, definitely a sore subject. But something tells me your experience with the 3 chats has a history. I guess, but I'm not sure you want to hear about it. Go on, Luke. Tell her your story, Kaylee interjected. It's fascinating. Linda feigned a pout. Please? You two aren't going to leave me much of a choice, are you? No, they answered in unison. Okay. Let's see, where do I start? Harper. Life doesn't always work out the way we expect it to. I realized my marriage was over, long before the first anniversary. Funny thing is, I wasn't that upset about the end of my marriage, but my self-confidence took a big hit. I first met Harper my senior year of high school. I was an 18-year-old virgin, and she was 18 too, and far from pure. I wasn't looking for her, but a group of friends brought us together. I should have said no, but my little head beat my big head for that decision. My teammates cornered me in the locker room after the game. Luke, when are you going to stop hanging around with the airship and find yourself a girl worthy of our protector? Chuck, you talk about Aubrey like that again and I'll whip you. She's not a blimp, just a little uptight. But I like her, and even though we're not dating, she's my best friend. Okay, but you need a real girl who will put herself out there. You need your cherry to burst. I don't need your help to get laid. Back off. Ted stepped in to calm me down. Hey Luke, I'm sorry. It's just that Harper was telling my girlfriend that she'd really like to meet you. Harper may be beautiful, but she likes to date everyone who wears pants. That's not what I need. She's not really like that. She's nice and she cares about you. Come to my party tomorrow night. She'll be there. Just to see if there's any chemistry between us. What could it hurt? Guys were very cruel when it came to my friend Aubrey. She wasn't a sleek, skinny model, but that's exactly how I liked her. She had a girl face that I knew would remain gorgeous even in middle age and beyond. We weren't dating, but there was no difference because we were always together. In truth, I found her extraordinarily beautiful both inside and out. If it were up to me, I would have wanted us to be each other's first lovers, but she had a moral fiber that I admired, and I tried to emulate it. We'd grown up in church together, and I wanted to be true to my beliefs. Unfortunately, those damn teenage hormones were destroying the weak defenses I erected around my chastity. Admit it. I wanted to get laid. At Ted's party, Harper was looking for me like a missile homing in on a target. Luke. Ted said you'd be here. Hi, Harper. You look good. Good enough to eat. Well, I don't. Relax, Luke. I'm just messing with you. She wasn't just messing with me. We soon became close, and not halfway through the night my feelings changed significantly. I was clearly in a state of attraction. Aubrey noticed it right away. She looked hurt, but she accepted my change. A few weeks later, she started dating Dennis, a center on our team. Knowing that Aubrey would take her time, I jokingly teased them both that, as a defender, I interacted with Dennis more than she did. She didn't think it was funny and Dennis told me to calm down. I apologized to them and felt awkward afterwards. Their reaction made me rethink my changed views, but I was just a teenager. I began to drift away from Aubrey and Dennis. Looking back, I realized that I was in a position where their happiness was uncomfortable for me. I wanted to enjoy myself, and their presence was getting in the way of that. Harper and I dated and figured things out through the end of the school year and into the summer. I enjoyed our connection. She was attractive and confident, and we shared many common interests. After a few months of happiness, I began to have deeper feelings for her. Harper was planning to attend Washington State University in the fall, and I was heading to Indiana on a soccer scholarship. As much as I liked her, I realized the long distance would be difficult for both of us. We agreed to keep the relationship open and see each other whenever possible. Hormones and partying instincts ruled my life for the first 2 years of college. True to our word, Harper and I had a relationship when we were at home. We never discussed what was going on when we were apart, and I guess that was wise of us. I found myself comparing every girl I dated to Harper, and none of them stood up to criticism. I missed her more and couldn't wait to see her again. I started calling her more often and felt that she was experiencing the same feelings I was. My love for her grew even though we were thousands of miles apart. Maturity and responsibility came to me in junior high school. The values I had been taught as a child swamped my consciousness, and I was tired of the emptiness that seemed to be part of my promiscuous lifestyle. From that point on, I only had an intimate relationship with Harper, and I began to think about proposing to her. The summer before my senior year of high school, I needed to figure out what Harper thought about our relationship. "Babe, can we talk about something?" "Of course, Luke." "Are you okay? You look very serious." "Well, yeah. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I guess for the first 2 years of college I was, well, a little wild with girls. I always loved you, and I knew we'd get back together, but I was horny, and girls were so, kinda, available. Was it the same with guys? I've had a few affairs for pleasure, but I've always wanted it to be with you. I mean, no one else can compare to you, you know?" "Yeah, I know. I figured you were seeing guys, and that's okay. That's what we agreed on. But this year has been different for me. I started to feel like I was cheating, and I realized that I want to be the same person with you. I want you to know that since we were together last summer, I haven't kissed a single girl. I hope, maybe, you can promise me that you feel the same way. I only love you, Luke. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I mean, will you marry me?" Harper jumped into my lap and jumped up and down, crying out, "Yes, yes, yes, yes." We made love, and then we lay next to each other and shared our dreams of a life together. Suddenly she stood up with a concerned look on her face. "You don't want to get married now, before our senior year, do you?" "No. Maybe a few months after we graduate." Harper seemed relieved. I assumed she was thinking about what was practical, but it still bothered me a little. I also realized that I never got an answer to the question about her recent fidelity, but she had waved some kind of magic wand, making me believe that she was faithful only to me. It was a minor thorn in my side at the time, but it came back to haunt me. After graduation, Harper took a job with a real estate firm and I started my career with personal wealth financial planning. We were married in December of that year, and I considered myself blessed. I was determined to return to the faith I had as a child, but it became apparent that Harper was not interested in spiritual matters. I began to realize that living with a person gives you a much greater understanding of what they are really like. I didn't have to wait long after the wedding to see the first warning sign. Harper talked me into interrupting our honeymoon in California wine country so we could attend a New Year's Eve party with more of her friends, most of whom she knew from college. I hardly saw my new bride all night. The party was held in a dance hall that we had all rented with our own money. Harper fluttered around the room and chatted with everyone. Sometimes I didn't even know where she was. A few of her friends kept me entertained, as if it was their assignment for the evening. I had to carry a passed-out Harper to the car and to our apartment. She was very attentive and apologized for her behavior at the party, so I took it easy. But over the next year, events accumulated in my mind that I could not come to terms with. She had a lot of late-night meetings, she wasn't too candid about the details of her work and life, and at times I felt like her friends were at the top of her priority list. How could I have been married less than a year and yet feel so alone? A year passed, and it was time for another New Year's Eve party at the same place. I really didn't want to go, but I felt compelled to see what Harper did when she was alone with her friends. I figured I'd have a better chance of seeing the real Harper if she didn't think I was there, so I excused myself at the last minute, citing an upset stomach. Harper even seemed happy that I was staying home. I let the party go on for a few hours and then showed up around 10. I tried to stay out of sight as soon as I showed up. It didn't take me long to see Harper at the other end of the room. There was a group of 6 guys standing around her, and they were all taking turns showering her with heavy, passionate kisses. Then I saw her pull one of them by the hand into a hallway that led to the small practice rooms for dance classes. The rest of them were standing off to the side, giving each other high fives and looking like they were standing in line. I stood there for a bit, wondering what to do, and decided I should see what would happen. I marched across the room, but didn't escape the attention of Harper's friend, Amy. Luke. Harper said you were homesick. Stay out of my way, Amy. Luke, please don't go back there. I grabbed her hands and looked her straight in the eyes. Why? What am I going to see? Amy began to tremble with fear. She could see the anger building in me, and I could barely hide it. Luke, you're not going to like this. Please don't. She really loves you. I pushed her aside and went after my wife. There, in the training room, my wife was making out and starting to undress with a guy she had willingly brought into the room. I felt like rushing in and pouncing on her and Chuck Norris. But unbeknownst to me, I took a few pictures on my phone and went home. Once in the apartment, I printed out one of the pictures and left it on the table along with my wedding ring. I packed enough clothes for a week and went to the Holiday Inn. It was weird. I sat in the room and felt like I should have cried or burst into anger. Instead, I felt as if I finally had the answers to all the questions that had been swarming in my head for so long. I kept her in the dark for a few days while I looked for a small furnished apartment, and then I called and arranged to come over so we could talk. Luke, where the hell are you? How could you just leave like that? I'll come over tonight to talk. Luke, please. I'm sorry for what you saw. It was. Shut up, Harper. We'll talk tonight. I'll be there at 7. I hung up the phone and searched for some emotion to hold on to. Emptiness, of course, came up. A little anger and a healthy dose of bruised ego came too, but I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Sure, I'd spent a little over a year on it. Somehow discovering the real Harper had justified my growing suspicions our relationship had never really been right. I remembered a conversation my father and I had many years ago. We were talking about love and relationships, and I asked him how I could recognize that I had found the right woman. His words ring in my ears now. It's different for everyone, but when you kiss her, maybe your knees will go weak, or maybe you'll feel a glow, like you've been filled with electricity. Maybe it will manifest in some other way, whatever. You'll know. I couldn't remember feeling this kind of validation with Haley. Sure, our kisses had been filled with heat, but now I realized it was purely physical. I'd never felt the real connection my father had talked about. To my surprise, I was, fine. I was still disappointed by her behavior, but I was handling the situation just fine. I entered the apartment at 7 without knocking. Harper was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the damn picture and my ring. Calmly and clearly resigned to the inevitable, she greeted me with words that summed up the whole event. We're done, aren't we? I sat down across from her. Yes. Aren't you going to yell or rant or something? Why? Should I? I would. I think I've finally seen the real you, Harper. And the truth is, we're not right for each other. Even more telling, at least to me, is that I don't think I've ever really loved you the way married people should love each other. I don't think you love me the same way there. Let's break up, keep it civil, and move on. Okay? I was surprised she didn't show more emotion. She just shrugged, which told me clearly what she was thinking, even more convincingly than her next words. I guess I wasn't ready for marriage. I wanted to be ready. You're the kind of guy I want to settle down with, and I wanted to be the girlfriend and wife you wanted. I really did. You're right. It's just not me. Back at the bar tonight. Linda seemed to be deep in thought when I finished the Harper part of my story. Wow. I guess you dodged a bullet when you realized the truth so early in your marriage. I didn't realize my marriage was a lie until my 14th year. Don't get me wrong, because you really are a beautiful woman, but I can see the pain on your face when you talk about it. I think no matter how long it takes, finding out the truth can hurt like hell, but at least you can move forward maybe a little wiser. Leaning my elbow on the bar, I leaned my head on my arm and looked her in the eye. Something tells me I need to hear your story, too. I'm getting better, but yeah, I'll share my story sometime. But we're only one cheat in your story, and I need to hear the whole thing. If I have to. Everything ends better than it begins, so maybe this will cheer you up. Linda looked away for a moment and seemed to be deep in thought. Do you still see Harper? On occasion. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis shortly after our divorce. It made her grow up fast. She's holding up well and ended up marrying a nice guy. They seem to fit together. You're not the kind of guy who likes karma biting his ex's ass, are you? No, and certainly not like that. Getting sick or getting something like multiple sclerosis is not something I would wish on anyone. And I still have good feelings for Harper. We really ended on good terms. So who's number 2? I had to giggle. Number 2. A fitting description of how things went with Zoe. Zoe. I met Zoe at a party thrown for my old friends, Aubrey and Dennis. They'd been married since college, and after graduation, Dennis had gotten a job with a large manufacturing company. At a very young age, he was promoted to vice president of finance and had to move to Dallas. All of their friends gathered in the ballroom of the Hyatt Hotel to wish them a happy move. I was talking to my friend when the room seemed to light up and Zoe walked in with glamour and grace. In a word, she was stunning. I found out later that her picture was on the cover of Maxim about a year ago. Every man, including me, had to wipe the drool from his lips. Most of the men were married and their wives were with them. Then the funniest thing happened. The wisest general in the army could not have organized a quicker or more effective defense than the maneuver that the wives instantly initiated. Almost every man was physically engaged in a serious conversation with his spouse. I was one of the 3 remaining single men, and Zoe quickly cast her hungry gaze in my direction. I watched as she purposefully made her way toward me, and I immediately feared that the arousal in my loins was about to become obvious. Hi. I'm Zoe. Is it just me, or did about 20 women just demonstrate their entitlement to men? I don't think it was your imagination. My name is Luke, by the way. She shook my hand, and her touch sent shivers running down my spine. Zoe. Nice to meet you, Luke. I guess the ladies think I'm a threat. It's not like you have a chain protecting you. No, my chain broke a few months ago. And yes, you are a threat. You should know how great you are. Thanks, but you're pretty damn handsome yourself. I felt my cheeks heat up with a violent fit of blush and tried to find an appropriate response. So, shall we spend some time admiring each other's beauty? Oh man, her laugh was amazing. I like you, Luke. You're funny. So maybe we should just hang out and get to know each other better. And we hung on. She was bright and engaging. We communicated with great ease, and I was hooked on her. She seemed to like me, too. The party was winding down, and Zoe and I made a date for the next night. She had to leave a little early, which gave me time to pay attention to Aubrey and Dennis. Aubrey was still the same beautiful girl I knew in high school. She still wasn't thin, but to me she was still perfect. When I approached, she greeted me with a slight frown. Hey, Casanova. Did Zoe get a hold of you? We kind of hit it off. Why? Be careful. You know that Dennis and I care about you very much, and we don't want you to get hurt again. She seems harmless, and I like her a lot. Luke, I love you, my friend. Open your eyes. You're repeating a pattern. I was a little upset about Aubrey's punishment. How could she assume that I didn't know what I was doing? I'll be fine. I mean, we just met. I'm not walking down the aisle yet. Okay. She's smart and successful, so she has a lot of merit. Just promise to keep your eyes open. Please guard your heart. It's a good heart, and you're a great guy. You need to find a woman who is worthy of you. I wanted to say it, but I couldn't. I wanted to say, I found that woman, but I let you go. Zoe and I wasted no time. We seemed to agree on all of life's major issues. We soon became intimate, and 6 months after we met, we were married. I made it clear that fidelity was at the top of my priority list, and she let me know that she felt the same way. She seemed to share the same commitment to faith that I did, so I assumed we had what it took to last a lifetime. She owned a small modeling agency and took special care to ensure a work-life balance. We got married without too much pomp and circumstance and began our life together with hope for the future. Our home life was warm and rewarding, and our sex life was fantastic. Zoe never gave me any reason to question her commitment to monogamy or our marriage. After 3 years of wedded bliss, we began discussing the possibility of having children. She seemed excited about the prospect, but I noticed that she had never taken the steps necessary to get pregnant, such as not taking the pill, although she had agreed to do so. Despite this, I was walking on air and was convinced that I had a gold mine of information with the arrival of Zoe in my life. It seems that just when you think all is well in the world and your life is on the right track, life decides to throw you for a loop. It was a dark and rainy Monday when I faced one of the worst days of my life. Aubrey called my office early in the morning. She rarely called me at work, and I could tell from her voice that something was wrong. "Aubrey, what's going on? I don't want you to worry, but I wanted you to know. Dennis has leukemia." "Oh my God, did you just find out?" "Just got back from the doctor's office. He said they can do a lot about it these days. I hope he's right. Are you okay?" She sighed, and I heard her pull herself together. "Yes. I mean, the doctor seemed awake. Of course, it's an unexpected shock. He's been a little tired lately, but we didn't think that much. But you know Dennis. He pretends to be chipper, but I can see right through his game. Keep us in your thoughts, okay?" She tried to sound reassuring, but I knew my friend too well. She was hiding intense fear and a strong wave of depression. I wanted to be there to hug both my friends, but it didn't happen. We usually talked on the phone about once a month, and from now on I decided to increase the number of phone calls to at least weekly. She was thousands of kilometers away, but my friend needed me. Our conversation broke down and depression swept over me. I felt like I was drowning in an ocean of anxiety as I looked out my office window at the bleak, rainy landscape. I was just dealing with this news when another good friend, my personal assistant Melanie, quietly entered my office and closed the door. Her face flushed, her eyes were red as if she'd been crying, and from the look on her face I assumed she'd heard about Dennis and Aubrey. "I was wrong. Luke, you know I love you and would never want to hurt you, right?" "Mel, you're scaring me." "What's wrong?" "I was worried about it all weekend, but you should know. On Saturday, my husband and I had dinner and went dancing to celebrate our anniversary. We went to a jazz club downtown and—" She started crying. I was trying to guess what she was going to say to me. And then it hit me. Zoe was supposed to be at a meeting with the partners on Saturday in Portland, and she was staying the night. "What, Mel? Your wife was there with some guy, and well, I took some pictures." "Oh God, I'm so sorry, Luke." The pictures were very clear. The caresses under the table, the grinding on the dance floor, and the hard kisses were clearly captured. My tears flowed like Snoqualmie Falls. First Dennis and Aubrey's horrible news tore at my emotions, and now Zoe had betrayed me. Melanie smothered me with hugs and apologies. I managed to calm down and thank her for telling me and apologize for Zoe ruining their weekend. Mel forwarded me the pictures and I printed out more graphic ones to use that night. I recognized the guy as one of the models Zoe ran. On the way home I stopped at the pub to build up my courage for the confrontation. Kaylee did a great job of helping me calm down. A couple of my soccer friends were also there. I didn't know it at the time, but two of them had devised a plan to teach Zoe's lover a lesson. I found out later that they tracked him down and beat him to a pulp. I wished they hadn't, but at the same time I felt guilty for secretly being glad they had. The wait for Zoe to come home seemed like an eternity. My stomach was churning. My mind was constantly switching between anger, hatred, regret, thoughts of forgiveness, and pain. When she finally entered the house, I was sitting at the dining room table with the finished exhibits. She walked into the room all cheerful and sweet. "Hey baby!" She came up to me to kiss me, but I pushed her away. "Sit down. Now!" She sat down so fast she almost swept past the chair. "Luke, why are you talking to me like that?" "I don't know." One by one, I put the pictures on the table. "Maybe I should talk to you some other way?" She looked at the first one and immediately turned white. Her tears were flowing freely and would have melted me the day before. Now they just pissed me off. "So what part of faith did you not understand?" "Luke, What? What are you trying to say? It's just sex?" It doesn't mean anything? Do you only love me? What can you say that will make you snap out of it? Please don't hate me. Take a few days and chill out. I'll never. Never what? Never do that again? How often have you done it with this guy? And with other guys? I can't believe you'd betray me like that, especially knowing how Haley cheated on me. You just don't understand a woman like me. Understand? My rage boiled over. Taking her by the neck, I brought her face close to mine and screamed at the full power of my lungs. I completely understand what you are. I would call you a pig, but that's an insult to pigs. You fooled me, didn't you? I'm sure you and your boy enjoyed talking about me while he was stealing you from me. I pushed her away roughly because I was afraid of what I might do. I could see the fear in her eyes, and it pleased and frightened me at the same time. I couldn't look at her face anymore, so I turned my back to her to gather my strength and speak more calmly. I guess I'll never understand a liar or a cheat. You really did fool me. You betrayed me and everything I thought we had. Damn it, I didn't think I could be hurt so badly, but congratulations, you managed to destroy me. I think I've realized who you are, and I know for a fact that I can never trust you again. For a few moments I tried to calm my anger as she cried softly. I want you out of this house tonight. My attorney is preparing the divorce papers now. The prenup is still in effect since you managed to screw it up. You have half an hour to clean up, and we'll talk about how you get the rest of your stuff over text. I started to walk away and she still continued to howl. I didn't care. Luke, please. I only love you. Please don't. I pulled Zoe against me, looking down at the floor. Do you love me? I don't love you anymore. I look at you, and all I see is ugliness and absolutely none of what I need. And don't you dare say you love me. Love doesn't do what you did to me. You only love yourself. Now get out of here before I come back. And tell your boyfriend to run. Fast and far away. Back to the bar. Linda hesitantly voiced her opinion. Your reaction was stronger than I could have anticipated. Even though we had just met, I had the impression that you were a kinder and gentler person. Luke is kind and gentle, Kaylee added. But betrayal can awaken the beast in all of us. Yes. I admit, I'm probably a little out of it. But Linda, you were clearly on the cheater's side, so maybe you can understand me. With Harper, I knew we were never right for each other. I believed with all my heart that Zoe was the one, and she ripped my heart out. I said those things to vent and maybe to hurt her as much as possible without resorting to physical violence. But what I said was true. Maybe she'll learn a lesson from this, and maybe she won't. How did it go after that? Were you able to end the relationship or break up amicably? I calmed down, and eventually we talked. If she had just made a mistake, I think I would have tried to save our marriage. I'm not perfect, so I would have hoped for forgiveness if the situation had changed. But this was an affair that had been going on since Zoe and I were married, and she couldn't even commit to ending it. So we broke up, but not on the most amicable of terms. Surprisingly, Zoe was malleable and accepted the divorce as it was presented to her. She moved her business to New York, and I haven't seen or heard from her since. What happened to her lover? You said he was badly beaten. Did it backfire on you? He had a lot of bruises and was in pain for a while, but he has recovered. What upset him most was the scar above his eye that threatened his modeling career, but even that has gone. Ironically, Zoe became my alibi, as the attack happened 45 miles from home, at the very time I confronted Zoe in our dining room. I'll admit my first reaction was a feeling that justice had been served, but it quickly faded away. Sure, he was a creep, but I didn't mean for it to happen, and I never provoked him. So that's two. It looks like you picked identical women and expected different results. I smiled sadly. You sound like my friends. They all tried to tell me the same thing, but I guess I'm a slow learner since I went down the same path after Zoe. Are you kidding me? No. I wish I could. As sad as it is, I think you'll get a kick out of the way I found out about Samantha's cheating. Samantha. My divorce was finalized in October 2016. I decided to fly to Dallas to see Aubrey and Dennis and join them for Thanksgiving. As usual, air travel was tight that week and I sat in the SeaTac airport for several hours due to delays. I was concentrating on my beer in the lounge when a charming blonde woman lowered herself into the seat across from me and was having a tense conversation with someone on the phone. Look, I can't control the actions of the airlines. I can't go to the gate and demand that we take off because you demand that I arrive on time. He's delayed. I'm going to be there later than expected. She had the cutest dimples that danced as she spoke, and I couldn't help but giggle to myself. She disconnected the call without waiting for an answer on the other end and muttered a few strong words under her breath. Then, with a glance at me, she realized that I couldn't help but hear her talking and decided I was laughing at her. Are you laughing at me, asshole? Oh God, no. I'm sorry it seemed that way. I didn't mean to hear you. Then what are you laughing at? I was caught and decided honesty was best. I hope this doesn't piss you off, but, well, I've noticed that you have amazing, beautiful dimples that dance across your face when you're arguing with someone. Thankfully, she laughed and blushed, trying to hide her dimples. I'm sorry. My mom can make me cranky when she acts like that. She thinks the whole world revolves around her schedule, and it's my fault I show up late. Mothers can be like that. Are you okay? Oh, yeah? I love my mom. But I have a hard enough time dealing with air travel as it is, and I don't need her attitude at all right now. Your phone is ringing. It's her. Believe me, I'm sparing her feelings by not answering. I'm not in the best of moods and I can't be responsible for what might come out of my mouth. Can I buy you a drink to help you regroup? A drink at a stranger's? She threw a little girl look, with a shy grin and dimples on her cheeks. I'm not that kind of girl. Well, I'm Luke. And you are. She giggled, smiled, and whispered with feigned desperation. I'm Samantha, or Sam to my friends. See? We're not strangers now. What would you like to drink, Sam? We chatted for almost 2 hours before my flight finally boarded. I was fascinated by her wit and charm. She didn't have the beauty that Harper or Zoe had, but she was still very attractive. Her smile was a little crooked like Drew Barrymore's, and combined with those wonderful dimples, she seemed sexy as hell to me. She had the body of an athlete, which made me feel like a high school sports star who had let himself go a little extra. I decided I had to fix that. I almost regretted hearing the airline announcement. Damn. Sam, they're starting to board my flight. I've really enjoyed getting to know you. Do you work in Seattle? Yes. I live in Redmond. I'm almost next door, in Kirkland. Can I be so bold as to ask if you're in a relationship? Because I'd love to buy you dinner and get to know you better. My opinion of how cute she was further reinforced when she wrinkled her nose. Wow, you move fast. But you're pretty cute, so. Okay. Give me your phone. Sure. Here. Okay. My information is in your contacts under Sam, and you can call me anytime after I get back next Wednesday. Thank you. I have to say, I never thought I'd be this happy after having to sit and wait for a flight. We hugged, and I felt like I was in heaven. She pulled away from our embrace and looked into my eyes. Do you really like my dimples, or was that just a line? Trust me. I really, really like them. Luke? Yes. Please don't turn out to be some kind of weirdo. I don't want to have to knock you. I was glad she was laughing. Don't worry. I'm so normal that I'm more afraid of boring you than anything else in the world. The flight was beautiful because I felt like I didn't even need an airplane. I was in full lust mode with the hope of love on the horizon. The chemistry seemed more than appropriate. In Dallas, Dennis met me at the airport, and I was surprised at how well he looked. On the way to their house, he gave me the happy news that he was in remission. He is one of the nicest guys on this earth, and I couldn't have been happier or more relieved to hear that he was doing well. Dennis and Aubrey had 3 children, and their home seemed like the place I had always wanted for myself. Love was everywhere. Aubrey cooked an amazing feast and took the time to scold me for choosing narcissistic women as wives instead of finding a girl with good character. In the back of my mind, I wondered what category I would put Sam in if our relationship worked out. I waited to call Sam until Thursday of that week when we both got home. I was counting on a quick conversation to plan a date, but I ended up feeling like a teenager when our conversation turned into a 2.5-hour marathon. By the time the conversation was over, my head was hovering in the clouds. I could feel a huge smile on my face and enjoyed the moment. It was then that I realized I wanted her. I couldn't wait to pick her up for her date. I was so excited that I had to fight the urge to leave too soon. Her apartment was only 3 miles from my house, and I expected to spend a lot of time driving the route between our homes in the coming months. Our first date was at one of my favorite places, Matt's Rotisserie and Oyster House restaurant. We had an easy conversation and I couldn't stop looking into her eyes. I was falling much faster than I wanted to, but I was clearly falling. The longer we talked, the more beautiful she seemed. Our conversation turned to light kisses during dessert. We were barely out the door before she pulled me into one deliciously wet kiss with her tonsils. "Luke, you have no idea how much I want you to come visit me for a while." "Oh, I think I know how much, but I want to take my time." "Do you mind?" "Yeah, I guess so. You're still getting over your marriage, so there's no rush." "Thank you for understanding. You're much more understanding than my little brain." She raised an eyebrow and smiled at me. I was going to say something like, "That thing poking me in the stomach doesn't seem small at all," but that wouldn't be something to say if we weren't in a hurry, would it? I chuckled to hide how nervous I was suddenly. No, if I say something like that, it will definitely change my timeline. "Luke, I've lusted after you since the moment you told me your name at the airport, but let's let the relationship progress at a relaxed pace." "I don't mind." Cold showers helped for a few weeks, but by Christmas we realized we were in love and let our passion run wild. I'd never run a marathon, but the closeness with Sam was the most intense workout I'd had since soccer drills at Purdue. Luckily, her favorite pose is cowgirl on horseback, so I had time to catch my breath. I wanted to make sure I could keep up with her, so getting in better shape was my main New Year's resolution. A few months later, Sam moved into my house just in time for Valentine's Day. There was no question that we were in an exclusive relationship, and we were rapidly gaining momentum. That summer, we planned a small, intimate wedding. Sam played volleyball and led an active lifestyle, playing a variety of sports. Hiking, kayaking, biking, and jogging took up all of our weekends when we weren't busy in the Olympic bedroom. She was active at a local gym, and I decided to join in too. We set up a workout challenge, and I bought us both Fitbits and an iPad app that allowed us to track our fitness progress individually and as a couple. I was in the best shape of my life. The wedding was set for the first Saturday in August. We each invited our close relatives and a few friends. Melanie, my personal assistant, will be coming with her husband. Aubrey and Dennis would be flying in for the wedding. I felt I had done everything right this time and couldn't wait for Sam to be Mrs. Riley. The wedding was informal, with only 37 invited guests, so Sam didn't have the stress that turns many women into brides. Sam's sister was a bridesmaid and didn't have to worry about other attendants. Our minister performed the ceremony right in the reception hall, which avoided transportation issues and wasted time. I stood next to the priest and watched my bride walk toward me. Before the procession began, I looked around at the guests. Melanie was standing a few rows behind and glowing with happiness, but I didn't see Aubrey or Dennis. I hoped they didn't have any problems with their flight. We said yes, kissed, and started the party. The longer the reception went on, the more anxious I became about not seeing Aubrey and Dennis. About 2 hours into the reception, I felt my phone buzz with an incoming message. "Luke, I'm sorry we missed your special day. I didn't want you to worry or ruin your holiday, but Dennis has been diagnosed with cancer again. He went into the hospital yesterday. Don't worry about it. We're fine, but I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. Call me when you get back from your honeymoon." I told Sam about it, and she agreed that I needed to call Aubrey immediately. I did, and she tried to reassure me that everything would be okay, but we knew each other too well. Dennis was in trouble, and she didn't do a good job of hiding how scared she was. Sam and I honeymooned in Hawaii, and I tried my best not to dwell on the difficulties that Dennis and Aubrey faced alone. All in all, it was a great trip, and I was comforted by Sam's understanding and attention to my emotional needs in addition to her considerable skill in satisfying my physical desires. A few weeks later, in mid-September, Sam and I flew to Dallas for a long weekend to visit Dennis and Aubrey. I walked into their home, and their son and 2 daughters almost hugged me as they greeted their Uncle Luke. But what really knocked the spirit out of me was the sight of Dennis. The big, strong center from my high school soccer team had become thin and frail. His complexion was gray, and he looked like death was looming over him. I tried not to look shocked, and tried my best to treat my friend the same way I always had. After dinner, Sam helped Aubrey with the dishes and Dennis took me to his den. "Luke, you've probably realized by now that I can't handle this. Come on, Dennis. You're a fighter. Life is a struggle we all lose sooner or later, my friend. I've made my peace with that. I'm more worried about Aubrey and the kids. They'll be fine financially, I've taken care of that, but promise me you'll take care of them, okay? I think they'll stay here in Dallas, but the kids will need to hang out with their godfather, Uncle Luke, and Aubrey will need to hang out with her best friend. You didn't have to ask, but I promise. You know I love you, boy. Don't you? I know. The feeling is mutual. You're a good man, Luke, and a good friend." I couldn't stop my lips from trembling. I thought guys weren't supposed to cry. Dennis struggled to get the words out with an obviously constricted throat. "That's what real guys do, buddy." Could silence be both warm and sad at the same time? It was like that for a few moments, until Dennis changed the subject. "By the way, Sam looks amazing. I hope you two live a long and happy life together." 2 weeks later, Dennis was gone. The funeral and burial took place in Washington, D.C., where their families lived. Aubrey and the children stayed with us for a few weeks as we tried to help them through this difficult process. Sam was again a wonderful and true partner in a difficult time. It was several months before Sam approached me with an idea. "Do you know Hugh, the owner of the gym? He's looking to retire and wondered if we might be interested in buying the place." "Really? What do you want to do?" "My career at Microsoft is good, but it's more like my dream. It's something I'd love to do." "Well, I really don't want to change careers. I'm too well settled and made my money in the market. Why don't you go into it yourself?" "Alone? I suppose I could, but I don't have that kind of money. Maybe I can help." "What is Hugh looking for?" "I have enough money to pay for the business, but he also wants to sell me the building. That's $2 million I don't have, and I don't think I can raise it." I was considering forming an LLC to invest in real estate because my portfolio had grown significantly, which meant I had plenty of freedom for other investments. We opened an LLC and named it Riley Investments. Sam created a separate LLC in her name for the gym, and then Riley Investments provided her with a line of credit to make some improvements and cover fluctuations in operating expenses during the first few years of operation. Our accountant and lawyer drew up the contracts, and our new businesses went off without a hitch. The night the paperwork was finalized, I was covered in kisses and we celebrated vigorously between the sheets all weekend. Microsoft asked Sam to stay on as a consultant at a substantial hourly rate. We discussed the pros and cons, but both of us realized that the additional income would greatly ease her financial situation. It didn't take long to realize that the new business would be a tremendous success. Owning her own business and working at Microsoft, which involved occasional travel, put a lot of strain on Sam. She had enough energy, but I had to work out at the gym if she needed to go out of town. Nevertheless, we were happy and even started making plans to start a family. Sam thought it would work out if she eventually gave up her job at Microsoft. Right after our first wedding anniversary, Sam had to travel to Atlanta for 3 days to help with software development. As usual, we talked every night and shared details of our days. On the second evening of the trip, she called just after 3 p.m. West Coast time or 6 p.m. Atlanta time. "Hey, Sam! How was your day?" "Remarkable. We've accomplished a lot, but there's still a lot to do. I can't talk long, as some of the team members are getting ready to continue their work over dinner. Can I do that tomorrow?" Sure. I'm going to head to the gym tonight to check on things, so I can go and see how the staff is holding up. Sounds good. Love you, baby. I love you too. I headed to the gym and decided to work out and then check on how things were going at the office. Satisfied that things were going well, I stayed to close the door at 9. I was tempted to call Sam, but it was past midnight in her time zone and I was sure she'd had a long day. I took a shower and decided to pass the time by playing a game on my iPad. The Fitbit app caught my eye and I decided to see what my progress looked like. I opened the app and felt the blood rush from my body. My gut twisted in pain as I saw the evidence that my life was falling apart. Sam was exercising. Her Fitbit was active. Why would she be exercising at almost 1 a.m. her time? The more I watched, the more I recognized the pattern and immediately realized what she was doing. I had to call her. On the first try, her phone rang until it went to voicemail. She had a distinctive ringtone for me, so she had to know who was calling. I tried several times, but the call still went to voicemail. Finally, on the 5th try, Sam answered. Baby, is everything okay? No, it's not. Are you hurt, in the hospital or something? Did it hurt? Yes. I was in a lot of pain. Oh no! What's wrong? What's his name? WH, whose name? What are you talking about? The guy you're riding, cowgirl. What's his name? What are you saying? I don't. Tell me, Sam. Why? Luke, How? Are you here? Are you going to answer my question? Oh shit, how did you know? Next time you have a love affair with someone other than your husband, take off your damn Fitbit. I disconnected the ringer, turned off my phone, and threw it across the room. It was impossible to sleep. I went for a walk to try and cool down, but instead I walked a few miles crying my eyes out. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not this. Why do I keep getting wives who can't be faithful? I would come home with things planned. We kept our finances separate, but we had several joint accounts and credit cards for household expenses. I went to my computer and transferred all the accounts to one of mine and closed the ones I could online. Late that night, I sent an email to my law firm asking to schedule an appointment with a divorce attorney as soon as possible. The next day I took a day off work to get my affairs in order. I had my divorce papers and prenup ready to go. I met with my accountant and attorney to begin the process of paying back Sam's gym loan. There was a clause in the loan documents that allowed me to demand the full amount owed with 60 days' notice. How could I have been such an idiot? How had she managed to fool me? All my insides ached, and I wanted her to feel that pain and more. The vengeful fool in me wanted to ruin her. I hadn't spoken to Sam since that incident, so I didn't know what her plans were for coming home. It didn't help that when I threw my phone, I broke it and had to buy a new one. I blocked Sam's number right away. I needed a friend, so I called Aubrey. She calmed me down and begged me to be less vindictive. She was my conscience when I didn't want her to be, but I promised her I'd try. I thought about stopping by the pub, but if Sam kept to her original travel schedule, she'd be back soon. I wanted to get this confrontation over with as soon as possible, and hoped I'd get home before she did. But I was out of luck. I walked in on a sobbing Sam. She ran up and tried to hug me, but I pushed her away. Don't touch me, Sam. Oh, please, oh God. Forgive me. Please, please forgive me. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. Don't leave me, please. I don't want to lose you. Did you lose? No. You left us. Luke, please, I was stupid. I thought. Thought? Thought what? That you'd get away with it? Or maybe that I wouldn't mind? Or did your brain tell you that it wouldn't matter if you broke our vows, or that you could deal with the consequences, or that you could disrespect me when you slept with me and it wouldn't make a difference? What about the thought that the risk of killing my love for you and tearing my heart out is worth the risk? You didn't think. Or maybe you thought there would be a guy with bigger equipment, or a better lover for you. Is that right? No, no. Then what foolish thought came into your head? Come on, give me your excuse. It wasn't justified, okay. It was just stupid, recreational sex. Wrecker, you've got to be kidding me. How often do you have recreational sex, huh? Do you fuck guys in the gym? Take trains in the women's restroom? I can't understand how you could even come up with a reason like that. I was just thinking. Again, you're trying to say you've thought this through. If the problem is your libido, then all I did was call to have phone sex. If you can't do without it for 2 or 3 days, then you're out of control. Please, look. Help us get through this. Let me summarize, my dear. You have allowed another man, who you still haven't named, to get intimate with you. That belongs to you and me alone. And don't give me that it's your body that you can do whatever you want with. It's yours and mine. Renounce all others until death do us part. Remember? Well, there was death. Our marriage died as soon as he got you into bed. She let out a deep cry that I had never heard from a human being. I wanted to savor her pain, but it was killing me, too. Pull yourself together, shut up and listen. You will be served with divorce papers in the next few days. No, no! Please, not the divorce. Help me do this. Listen, damn it! The terms of the prenup regarding adultery are in effect. You won't get much out of it. I am also applying for a loan. The amount of principal owed is a little over $350,000. You'll have 60 days to repay it or you'll lose the gym. No, Luke. You'll ruin me. I said shut up and listen. I won't claim credit if you sign the divorce. You resist, then I'll take everything. I don't care about money or the gym. I just want you. Please, let's work this out. No, Sam. You knew about my painful history with cheating wives. You swore you wouldn't do that to me, and yet a year later you did exactly that. I will never trust you again, especially when you show so little respect for me when you know what it will do to me. Damn it, Luke. I made a big mistake. I'm not perfect, but neither are you. Are you telling me you never wanted to date another woman? I fought my composure to stay calm. I bit my lips so hard I could taste blood. Yeah, I'm not perfect. We all have fantasies. The difference is that you acted on them. I would never do that. Please, stop begging. It makes me sick. But we were planning to start a family. What? Do you really think I want my children to have a mother who thinks the way you obviously think? I want to have good, decent, moral, loving children who will make this world a better place. I don't want their lives to be influenced by someone who can do what you did. She started wailing again, and I didn't want to hear it at all. I left, and told her I'd be back in a day or two when we'd both calmed down. It was hard to leave the destroyed woman I loved sobbing uncontrollably on the floor. At first I hoped she felt as destroyed as I did, but I felt horrible guilt for leaving her. Besides, I needed to get out of there before I broke down. I didn't want her to see that. After a few days, I cooled down. We talked and I agreed to go to counseling to see if we could save the relationship. I didn't want to be a 3-time loser and I really cared about her. I just didn't know if I could ever get that feeling of her being my life partner back. After 6 weeks of meetings with the counselor, we were driving home from the last session, and Sam was uncharacteristically quiet. I glanced at her a few times and saw tears rolling quietly down her cheeks. Like a lot of guys, I wasn't particularly observant, but I knew this night was going to change everything. We walked silently through the front door and Sam broke the silence. Can we sit and talk? I have a story to tell you. Sure, babe. I assumed she'd decided to sit next to me on the couch to avoid eye contact. Sam sighed heavily and, struggling for composure, began her story. When I was little, my dad and I were very close. I was his princess and he was my hero, which is what a father should be. My sister and I always snuggled up to him on the couch when we watched a movie or just relaxed as a family after dinner. Even during my rebellious teenage years, my dad and I were close. When I was 16, I made a purity vow to him at our church that I would save myself for marriage. I didn't make that promise lightly. I took every word of it seriously. When I was a kid, our church held events like this. Yeah. It was the order of the day back then. Anyway, I started dating a guy from my Sunday school class. We dated for about a year, and he kept pushing me to get intimate. On my 18th birthday, I gave in and Pandora's box was opened. I couldn't get enough. I know what you're like. Yeah. Anyway, one night all the family members had to go to a banquet and my boyfriend and I were left home alone. Of course, we got naked before the family car even pulled out of the driveway. After about 15 minutes we were already doing it, and yes, I was riding him hard. I looked up and saw my dad in the doorway looking at us. He was diabetic and had forgotten his insulin, so he had to go back for it. His mouth was trembling like he was going to say something, but instead he just walked away. I covered my eyes to chase after him, even though I had no idea what I was going to say. Before he walked out the front door, he turned to me. There were tears in his eyes and I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. I couldn't move. Then he calmly said, "You're a grown woman and you can make your own choices." And he left. He took it pretty calmly. No, not really. I hurt him terribly. But the thing that broke my heart the most was the look in his eyes that night and every day afterward until he died. Before that, whenever he looked at me, there was a love in his gaze that was impossible to miss. I could swear his eyes twinkled. But since that night, that look had disappeared. When he looked at me, I thought all he saw was me riding my boyfriend, a sight no father should ever have to see. Tears and pain streamed down Sam's face as she remembered her past. A chill ran down my spine as I realized why she'd forced herself to tell me about that horrible milestone from her past. I wanted to speak, but decided to let her finish. After that, we never hugged again. Sure, we hugged when we said hello or parted ways, but the intimacy of Daddy and Princess was no longer there. We loved each other, but now we were father and daughter. She paused to collect herself and I hugged her, partly to comfort her, but mostly to let her know that I understood her. Luke, I see the same look my father had when I look into your eyes now. Whenever you look at me, you see me riding some faceless guy and reliving my betrayal all over again. I feel like you desperately wanted to go away, for us to go back to the way things were before I ruined everything, but there's nothing you can do about it. I'm sorry. I'm not holding on to this to punish you or anything. I still love you. I know what you want, but that look will always be there. You can't trust me, no matter how much you want to. No matter what I do to make you believe that I will be faithful and never cheat again, deep down you will always fear the old saying, once you cheat, you always cheat. There's nothing either of us can do. I've broken what we can't fix so that things can go back to the way they were. Are you saying we're giving up? I'm saying you deserve someone you can trust with all your heart, and I deserve to find someone who will look at me the way you used to before my stupidity. I'm saying we both need to move on separately. Back to the bar. Linda's emotions were at breaking point. Tears were streaming down her cheeks in a silent cry. I had a few of my own, just from reliving the nightmare. After leaving Sam at the house, I came here to the pub. I walked in, and Kaylee figured it out just by looking at me. Kaylee wiped away tears as she recounted that evening. I noticed Luke walk in and I knew he was about to snap. I yelled to Pete to keep an eye on the bar and took Luke into the study. As soon as the door closed, he collapsed into my arms and burst into tears. Linda gazed down at her beer. I know the feeling. I know that pain. Kaylee calmed me down and talked to me for hours. Eventually she made me laugh a little, and that's when she came up with my nickname. 3 cheats against the wind? Yes, Kaylee said. I told him that he'd get over it, and eventually he could just let go of that pain and let the wind carry it away, like it had 2 times before. He swore he would never be in that position again. I knew him too well to believe he would live alone, but I figured he needed time. Linda put her hand on mine with a slight smile on her face. But you look okay now. In fact, you look more than okay. You're giving me hope. I just moved here for a fresh start, and fate seems to have brought us together, I think, so you can share your story with me. You look happy now. I finally realized that I was making the same mistake over and over again. It all started back in high school when I decided that sex, image, and confidence were more important than shared values and respect. I had the perfect woman, but I lost sight of her and never stopped looking for the wrong one. You were thinking about Aubrey. I closed my eyes and smiled. Oh, yeah? It took a few months before I was ready to move on from Sam, but I knew that the woman I needed and wanted was the woman who had always been my best friend. So you went to Dallas and knocked her down? Kaylee grinned and slapped the counter lightly. You'd think he'd done something so simple, but no. Genius Luke managed to screw that up too. Thank you, Kaylee's mom. Linda's face lowered as if she were watching a tragedy unfold. You didn't go after Aubrey? Of course I did. But I followed her around because I didn't know if she was ready to get over Dennis' death herself. We kept in touch, and I tried to figure out when the right time was to declare my love. Kaylee was my rock. I was ready to tell Kaylee that I had tickets to fly to Aubrey. Of course, I planned to knock her off her feet when I arrived. So, what happened? 4 weeks early. I woke up after a sleepless night. Actually, you probably can't wake up if you haven't slept, but I got up with a new sense of purpose. All night I tossed and turned until somewhere around 3 a.m. I made a decision. I was driving to Dallas to tell Aubrey how I felt. If everything went according to plan, I would come home engaged to the woman I had wanted for as long as I could remember. After making this decision, I couldn't sleep because I had to fight my fears and the excitement encompassing me. I was confused, but determined to find out if she felt the same way I did. It was Friday morning and I had some work to do, so I went to the office and feverishly did what absolutely had to be done and managed to buy a plane ticket for the next day to get my ass to Dallas. The task took longer than I'd bargained for, but by 4 o'clock in the afternoon I managed to finish my work, and I got to the pub to tell Kaylee about my plans. 3 cheaters, Luke, you're early today. I know, and I won't be able to stay long, but I had to tell you that I finally decided to see Aubrey. I have to tell her. Well, you don't. Look, I have to run and get ready. I want to stop by the jewelry store, so I'll be sure to show up with a ring in my hand. Luke, listen. Kaylee, thanks for your help. I couldn't. Luke, shut up and listen. I need to deliver these drinks, but if you shut up for a minute and turn around, I think you'll realize you don't need to go to Dallas. What? What do you mean? Look in the stall by the restrooms. I'll be right back. I turned around, and my heart jumped in my chest, but just as quickly fell into the abyss. I saw enough of her profile to recognize Aubrey. She was sitting with some guy, holding his hand across the table. They were smiling at each other, like 2 people who had shared a common love. The pain in my stomach was overwhelming. I walked quickly out of the bar before I made a fool of myself and threw up in the bushes near the bar's front door. I was in shock. My brain was a complete mess and I couldn't string 2 simple thoughts together. I turned off my phone and drove, feeling sorry for myself. I just kept driving and my thoughts went off on tangents until tears started to prevent me from seeing. I realized I had driven all the way through West Seattle, so I drove to Alki Beach to stop for a while. My eyes were burning when I finally found a parking spot. I parked and just sat there crying like a baby. Finally pulling myself together, I walked out onto the sidewalk along the beach and just sat there watching the sun set over the water. All sorts of thoughts came into my head, but I still couldn't focus and felt completely lost. By the time I was able to drive home, it was about midnight. I showered, got dressed, and then drove to the office around 1 a.m., hoping to occupy my thoughts with something else. Besides the fact that it was the middle of the night, it was Saturday, and I knew that I would be alone during the day, which was exactly what I wanted at that moment. Other than canceling the flight, I accomplished nothing. I slept a few hours on the couch in my office, and then I just sat in my desk chair and stared out the window, searching for answers that seemed beyond my reach. Should I let her go? Should I fight for her? I couldn't decide which way was right and which way was wrong. Finally, around 2 p.m., I headed to the pub to see Kaylee. I realized I had left the previous night without talking to her after she had warned me about Aubrey being there with a date, so she was probably worried. I walked in, and Kaylee saw me right away, but the look on her face was not what I expected to see. I expected her to be worried about me, but she was clearly furious. You damned fool. What were you thinking running out of here like that? She set the beer down in front of me and, without letting me get a word in edgewise, decided to start ripping my new asshole. You asshole! You've got me worried, you idiot. I have to finish serving the drinks, and you stay in the damn seat until I get back. The word she used had been changed to protect the innocent. Kaylee never swore, much less at me, so I decided it was best to keep quiet. What was she getting so worked up about? She continued to frown and shake her head, muttering horrible names at me. She texted someone, then went on to other customers, keeping an evil eye on me. It took Kaylee about 10 minutes to finish what she needed to do when she finally stood in front of me, eyes glaring like a demon trying to pierce my soul. She was clearly trying to moderate her fervor before she spoke. I froze speechless with fear. What a fucking idiot. I thought you were going to Aubrey's table, and you ran out the door like a complete fool. What the hell got into you? What was your simple mind thinking? I couldn't. Shut up. You spent months, no years, telling me how Aubrey was the woman you loved and then ran away without talking to her? But you warned me. You showed me where they were. Warned you? About what? Damn it, Kaylee. You know I love her more than life. I told you I was going to Dallas to finally tell her how I felt and ask her to marry me. In my mind, I had already dedicated my life to Aubrey, the woman I loved with all my heart. I had loved her since childhood and was willing to do anything to make her mine. When you warned me by showing me where she was sitting with her boyfriend, I realized that Aubrey probably had other plans with this guy. Kaylee's face visibly softened, but then I noticed she wasn't looking at me, but over my shoulder. Then I felt a gentle hand on my back and heard the angel's voice. Is that really how you feel about me, Luke? I've waited almost 20 years to hear you say those words. I twisted around on the bar stool, and Aubrey pulled me to her. Our lips met, and our tongues danced with a fury and passion I'd never felt before. I felt our hearts and minds merge into a single life bound by love. Our spirits soared into a new dimension, as if we could leave our bodies and look down on a heavenly connection. After 3 marriages and many other relationships, it only took one real kiss for me to realize what my father had been trying to tell me all these years. In my mind, it was confirmed without a doubt, Aubrey was the one. She was the true love I had always wanted and needed. Back to the bar. Linda couldn't hide the tears that came to her eyes. You almost missed the woman of your dreams again? Kaylee raised an eyebrow and looked at me. He did. When he'd recovered enough from their rather erotic display of affection, I asked him what he was thinking to pull a stunt like that. I told you. She was sitting with another guy. Kaylee looked ready to berate me again, but I noticed the glint in her eyes. Then I told him he was a damn fool for making assumptions without checking them out. A smile spread across my face when I felt her hands on my shoulders before she spoke. Kaylee, are you being mean to Luke again? I turned to see my love and pulled her lips to mine. After a few seconds, Kaylee giggled and cleared her throat. You two don't want to rent a room? That PDA is embarrassing all the customers. Aubrey smiled back at her. We'll be making great use of the room in a few days, won't we, honey? Linda smiled, her moist cheeks glistening. You two are beautiful together. Oh, excuse me. Linda, I'd like you to meet my fiancé. Hi, Linda. Luke's manners are a little off. I'm Aubrey. Happy tears flowed from Linda's eyes. Aubrey, it's so nice to meet you. Luke has been talking about you all evening. I have to say, if he had ended up with anyone but you, it would have been the worst story I've ever heard. It's so great when high school sweethearts end up together. Luke, were you talking about me? You're the only topic I think is important enough to talk about. She kissed me gently again. Oh, you're so cute. She raised her eyebrows and turned her attention to Linda. I wouldn't say we were lovers. We were best friends, that's for sure. I had to clarify. I think we both wanted to be lovers, but struggled to find a way to transition from being close friends. Aubrey grinned and replied, Actually, Luke was a horny teenager, and I was too serious to be the object of his erotic experimentation. Okay, she's right. Sometimes I wonder how things would have turned out if I had grown up much earlier. I always loved her and ended up settling for 3 women who had her outer beauty but were hollow inside and could never compare to the person she was and still is. Well, Aubrey, Luke was certainly right when he talked about how beautiful you are. Oh, you are too kind. The important thing is that when I look into his eyes, I see his heart intertwined with mine. I know he loves me unconditionally, and I feel like the luckiest woman on earth. Linda grabbed Aubrey's arm and scanned us both with a concerned look. Wait a minute. What happened to the other guy? Aubrey looked at her with an understanding smile. I didn't have another boyfriend. It was my cousin Paul. I stayed with him and his wife for a few weeks while I looked for a house in the neighborhood. I was already planning on moving back and hoping Luke would finally come to his senses and ask me to marry him. Linda grinned and wiped a few tears from her eyes. You two are beautiful together. Hell, I was hoping I'd have a shot at Luke. She laughed. But I see it's hopeless. I moved here from California for a fresh start and was hoping to make new friends and maybe a true soulmate. I hope there are a few more like Luke among my peers. Kaylee reached across the bar and took me by the shoulder and Linda with her other hand. Linda, you have 3 new friends here. Aubrey intervened. Yeah, and actually, you should come to the wedding on Saturday, especially since you're new here. Oh, that's nice, but I can't get involved. Take aim, girl. Coming to the marriage celebration of 2 of your 3 friends in Seattle is not trespassing. We won't be offended if you don't. Besides, almost everyone will be from the neighborhood, and I'm sure you'll take dozens of new friends away with you. Okay, you talked me into it. Luke, honey, text her the details. You really are the sweetest couple. Isn't it a shame you both had to go through such a hard time to get here? I can't speak for Luke, but I think he needed the experience he went through to get in shape. As for me, I wouldn't trade anything for the time I spent with Dennis and the joy our 3 children gave me. I loved that man with everything I had. So if we wanted to start with Luke differently, it didn't matter, and in the end, it probably wouldn't have worked out. I think the timing was right and God knows what He is doing. My love for Luke has never left me, and it is just as strong as my love for Dennis. I am just lucky to have 2 wonderful people who have filled my life with love. That's so sweet. It's a real miracle you 2 finally ended up together. It wasn't a miracle, it was a conspiracy, I said as Aubrey rubbed my head and laughed. Kaylee and Aubrey did it all behind my back. It's true to an extent, Kaylee added. When Luke and Sam broke up, I called Aubrey. Luke had already told her, but I told her that's not why I was calling. I asked her when they were both going to wake up and get together. Aubrey chuckled, moving on to the story. By then Dennis had been gone for 11 months and I wasn't ready for a new relationship. I have to admit that a relationship with Luke was nothing new to me. But I wasn't ready, and I didn't think Luke would be ready either, since his last breakup was so fresh. Luke and I still talked at least once a week, and I could hear the anger and resentment in his voice. So I told Kaylee to get on with the healing process, since I knew Luke was here almost every night, and I would try to gauge his progress when Luke called. I already knew I wanted Luke, and figured he would be ready just in time for me to heal enough to move on. I joined the conversation when Aubrey paused. It's been about 6 months, and I've found that I can't think about anything or anyone but Aubrey. I even considered quitting my job and moving to Dallas to start my own business in hopes that Aubrey and I could build a future together. Of course, he didn't know I was already planning to go home to Kirkland. Hush, honey. I'm telling it. Keep going, hot stuff. Anyway, they were planning for when Aubrey showed up at the bar to pounce on me. And then that fool almost ruined everything with his disappearance. Kaylee, you ladies can't let a guy tell his story. I'm sorry. Carry on. Like I said, that's when I almost blew it. You know the rest of the story. When Aubrey came up behind me after Kaylee beat me up, it was like I went from complete darkness to a glorious light. When Aubrey spoke, before I could get a word out, or even finish spinning in my seat, I received the deepest, most passionate kiss of my life. I felt it, like an electric shock made my heart race for the first time. That was a real kiss, baby. Every kiss with you is like this. Anyway, we finally shared lips and she looked into my eyes and asked, You tell her, honey. I asked. Luke, do you love me as much as I just heard you say to Kaylee? He spoke so sweetly about me. And I replied, I love you with all my heart, and I want us to be a family. Marry me, Aubrey. That was 4 weeks ago. Wait a minute! The two of you planned the entire wedding in 4 weeks? Linda, I spent 16 years trying to get the woman I always wanted. I knew all along she was right for me, and I blew it by making too many stupid choices. We weren't going to waste a second more than we had to. The wedding was gorgeous. No one will ever convince me that there is a more beautiful woman than Aubrey. Linda did attend the wedding. She spent a lot of time getting to know a lot of people, but she paid special attention to Aubrey's older brother, who happened to be single. They have been together for several months now, and Linda has become one of our closest friends. I'm not Uncle Luke anymore, but the kids call me Daddy Luke now. They asked me if they should call me Daddy. I told them that I already loved them like family, but their daddy was a special person and they should always remember him as Daddy. Daddy or what became Daddy Luke would be fine. Before the wedding, Aubrey asked if I wanted some sort of prenup. No way, darling. You are my life and everything in the world to me. Trust me, I don't need a plan B. So 3 cheats of the wind won't go on the record? No way. Being married to you is a happiness I don't deserve. My days of marrying cheaters are in the past. Maybe one of our children will write a story about us someday. Maybe they'll call it It Only Took 4 Tries. Or something clever like that. Speaking of children, Mr. Riley, we need to set up the nursery. My 3 cheaters from the past have definitely been thrown away and no longer hold sway over me. I can now say with every fiber of my being, oh yeah? Life is good.